My name is Edward Dort, previously a resident of Fulton County, Georgia, which includes the city of Atlanta, where I experienced extensive judicial corruption and attorney misconduct. And even to this day, I continue to endure the corruption within the family court systems of Fulton County, Georgia. On June 13, 2008, without warning my ex-wife of 25 years, elected to file a contested divorce against me in the Family Division of Superior Court of Fulton County. I expected my ex-wife to make matters somewhat difficult. Nonetheless, I believe that no matter what happened, the court would be competent, professional, and fair in the application of the relevant laws and court rules, would espouse justice and equity in its treatment of all the parties and their claims. It would make sure that all the participants conduct themselves honestly and ethically. As a taxpayer, a law-abiding citizen, a veteran, and a credible member of the community, one would assume that it would be entitled to nothing less. However, to my horror, this is not remotely what happened. In fact, the travesty of justice I'm about to describe is a violation of the basic tenets of the American jurisprudence so heinous the average person would think the story took place in some lawless dictatorship in a third world nation instead of Georgia, USA. Even more alarming still is the fact that the outrageous abusive behavior I've endured, which continues to this day, occurs in most of the family courts from coast to coast, affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans each year. I call this a gravely sinister but silent epidemic of injustice, which is not gender-based, but is premised on the orderly, systematic raping and pillaging of the victim's assets and income. I've called this the business of divorce. Okay. Once I accepted that my marriage could not be salvaged, I decided to assert my rights under the state and federal constitutions and proceeded as a self-represented litigant. My first act was to attempt to reach a settlement with my ex-wife, requiring that I go through her attorneys. However, from the beginning, her attorneys, Robert Boyd and Stephen Maltalto, thwarted all meaningful, sensible efforts for the parties to come to a mutual beneficial agreement. I came to understand that in cases where the parties have substantial income and assets, attorneys do not make a living on cases that are settled too quickly. Therefore, they do whatever it takes to make the matter fester, including agitating their clients against each other. After many, many months of aggravation, expense, and needless drama in the pretrial phase of the case, much of which was riddled with numerous examples of judicial inequity and abusive litigation tactics by the opposing counsel, and premised by the fact that I was a self-litigant, the trial was set for August 2009. Gail Tucson was the presiding judge, and after a brutal 3-day trial in which I represented myself, Judge Tucson awarded a final judgment in divorce. As it turned out, the decree was not the final word, but the beginning of a frightening journey during which I was to uncover a magnitude of corruption, degradation, incompetence, and unethical conduct. Regarding Judge Tucson, the most appealing revelation I came upon was that I discovered that just prior to the trial, she not only received campaign contributions from both Robert Boyd and Stephen Maltalto, my ex-wife's opposing attorneys, but Mr. Boyd was a member of her re-election campaign committee. His partner was the chairman of her re-election campaign. In fact, Boyd made a point of showing up the third day of the trial and immediately dived into a very personal conversation with Judge Tucson. This may explain another hugely unethical act committed by the judge regarding the decree, and that she executed the exact version presented to her by my ex-wife's attorneys. In addition to the terms and conditions hugely beneficial to the former ex-wife, particularly with regards to the calculation of child support and alimony, the judge decided to add a fictitious sum of $2,500 per month as imputed income, which had absolutely no basis in fact. Plus, she made a point of awarding Stephen Maltalto $50,000 in attorney fees to be paid to me without any scrutiny whatsoever of this outrageous amount. Another horrendous consequence of Judge Tucson's wholesale acceptance of Maltalto's version of the decree pertains to the valuation of two properties in the marriage, a marital home in Atlanta, Georgia, and a vacation home in North Carolina. Despite the mortgage crisis and the ensuing real estate value collapse, which was taking place throughout the country, and especially in Georgia, Judge Tucson violated my constitutional rights and violated real estate law in assessing a value. In fact, the opposing party, my ex-wife's expert witness, clearly stated that his valuation was only good for one day, and that the properties would probably go down 35 to 50% due to the market conditions. Judge Tucson also ordered that unless these properties were sold at the ridiculous prices, at a minimum, I would have to pay 8% interest as a penalty per year. I had the responsibility of said properties. My ex-wife was court-ordered to sign a quitclaim deed for the vacation home and sign title over to me. She refused to do any of that. I subsequently followed by filing the appropriate contempts. In appearance in front of Judge Tucson, I was found in willful contempt of not selling the properties, even though my acts would only occur if my ex-wife signed a quitclaim deed. Her response, it was just lawyering. In addition, my ex-wife continued to file numerous contempts, and a lot of these matters were referred in front of a judicial officer, Gregory Alembic. Without getting too detailed on the technicality of the laws, the judicial officers are not supposed to hear any contempts or any matters that are contested if either party files 1000-4, which requires a judge to hear all matters. Judicial Alembic ignored the filings. In fact, the initial filing of that was done by Stephen Maltolto, knowing that this would be a contested matter. I subsequently filed the motion 3 times per the court rules. In spite of that, Judicial Alembic violated 2 basic aspects. He continued to hear the matter, threatening to incarcerate me because a house had not sold. In addition, deprived me of a court reporter when I requested to have one take down the matters in hand. Several times I've been threatened with incarceration in regards to real estate property and the sums to be paid on the real estate property in the worst housing market that we've seen since the Great Depression. I would like to note that Fulton County Court is infamous for throwing litigants in jail for nonviolent infractions of divorce decrees, especially for non-payment of support obligations, even if parties are verifiably impoverished. In fact, a class action lawsuit may still be pending, was filed because such horrendous incarcerations are commonplace. There has to be a better way to resolve matters, than throwing average people in jail who are not criminals, especially in this challenging economic environment. In addition, Judge Tucson used a common technique of speaking oral pronouncements and orders and never putting them down in writing. Sometimes months or even up to 2 years went by. As a result of her not following her judicial duties, serious matters of conflict remain unresolved. My appellate rights are thwarted, and new problems occur between the parties, which only resulted in continued legal fees, but not only continued legal fees, but produce fodder for new hearings, which cram a multitude of matters that are unjustly rushed and horribly confused. Well, during the above challenge, I've been fortunate to connect with many individuals and organizations that experience similar abuses. Pulse, a nonprofit advocacy effort favoring the right of citizens to engage in self-litigation without prejudice or abuse, took up my cause, assisted me in creating an online petition, and contacted Chief Justice Cynthia Wright about some of the judicial abuses that I had suffered. No response was ever received. Their efforts, along with my filing a complaint with the Judicial Qualification Committee, the branch of the state Supreme Court in charge of investigating the conduct of judges, against both Judge Tucson and Judicial Alembic, has resulted in the judge and the judicial officer finally recusing themselves from my case. Alembic expressly expressed this with his recusal directly to me during a hearing in March of 2011, after once again refusing my right to have a court reporter present in a threatening manner unbecoming of a judicial office, stated that he was stepping down from my case due to my online petition created by Pulse, my online activities associated with Lawless America, and he also threatened to sue me. It was at that moment I understood why Lembeck refused the presence of a court reporter, because he didn't want this type of evidence of harassment and prejudicial behavior to be documented. Okay. After the recusal of Judge Tucson, a new judge, Judge Bensonetta Tipton Lane, has been appointed to my case. It's been 3 years since the final judgment decree. Different judge, but same country club. She's basically a close personal friend of Judge Tucson and the attorneys mentioned above. Judge Lane has recently been cited in a CBS Atlanta investigation news story as a judge who takes money and favors from attorneys. Okay. I recently filed a recusal of her in which she denied my request. The grounds on recusing her were similar in regards to that not only the attorneys involved in the case have contributed to her campaign. I have continued to discover the business of divorce within the Fulton County court system is that the judges are controlled by the attorney. One example is the operation of the Family Law Institute of Georgia. This organization appears to be operating in the best interests of the family, but in fact is a means of attorneys to reinforce the relationship with judges at events such as the annual conference at expensive resorts on the coast of Georgia. As blatantly as stated in the organization's marketing materials, attorneys spend large sums of money in order to have access to judges. Pro se litigants, individuals, taxpayers have no such access to judges, have no such influence. In addition, one other organization, the Inns of the Courts of Georgia, is a separate private country club type organization with judges and attorneys get together, supposedly brainstorm on the latest and greatest issues within family court. In April of this year, Judge Tucson actually headed up a group leading attorneys on how to deal with pro se individual litigants. After asking to attend that event, because I am a pro se litigant, I was denied that access. But because they claim individuals who were not attorneys allowed to have access to that. In subsequent research, I found out that guardian ad litems attend, private investigative firms, forensic accountants, they either attend or they are part of a support organization to help fund the organization. And in reality, they're just paving the way for them to ensure that all their fees are paid for through the business of divorce. I am scheduled to appear again in court on December 18, 2012 to address additional modification of child support, which my ex-wife should be paying me, and alimony obligations due to the fact I had lost my previous job. And I'm allowed under the Georgia law to file emergency hearing, which in fact I filed over a year ago, and they were supposed to hear it immediately. And it's been over a year, and the judge has failed in her obligation to schedule this emergency hearing. The statute allows that alimony still accrues until the order is changed, which so every month that goes by, it's a tactic with the attorney as well as with the blessing of the judge, robbing me of my rights of the emergency hearing and cost me $3,500 a month, which anytime they could file a contempt of court, and if they choose to, throw me in jail because Georgia is a debtor prison state. I continue to network with various organizations such as Lawless America and the individuals who have endured similar and in some instances even worse abuse. I'm very fortunate that through my own pro se actions, I was able to, based on my son's election, which was allowed by the statute, is to obtain custody of my son, which he made the election freely and should have been honored immediately, but it took me over 14 months and $12,500 to get custody of my son with no proof whatsoever that I would not be a fit parent. In fact, my son, I talk to him every chance I get, because being a veteran and have serving the country, we talk about duty, honor, and country. And what does honorable mean in terms of an honorable Judge Tucson or an honorable Judge Benson Tipton Lane? And he's looking at serving the country, and he asked me why he should serve the country. I'm addressing our U.S. representatives as well as the Georgia representatives that there needs to be an investigation. There needs to be some type of task force to focus on the judicial corruption in order to implement not so much changes. There are plenty of laws and there are plenty of canons and ethics for the accountability within the judicial system. Right now, there is no arm to hold anybody accountable in the system. On behalf of myself and the hundreds and perhaps thousands of other Georgia citizens with stories similar or worse than mine, I respect our federal government officials, our state officials, our Attorney General, to come to Atlanta, spend as much time. First, I thought a few days. I think it's going to take a few years to clean up this mess. Now, Georgia court systems are a part of the problem. See for yourself how many of these actions has caused the destruction of many families, irreparable harm to innocent litigants, whose only mistake was to be so naive as to perceive the courts as an institution of fairness and equity, rather than the lawless bastions of unscrupulous practitioners unwillingly financed by the taxpayers who make up the large number of its victims, who come to engage in the immensely profitable business of divorce and have resulted in lawless America. Thank you.